Hello, and welcome back to the Black Techies podcast. I'm your host, Herbert Seward, and we've been gone for a minute, a
Yeah, we
long
have.
time.
Yeah, we
So,
have.
so for those folks out there that have been waiting patiently to follow, to check out another podcast and see, what we've been up to. Thank you for being patient. There's been a lot of stuff going on with all of us. Tonight we have, a new addition to our ranks as soon as she actually signs on. That would be Miss Ebony Burrows. She's our newest Black Techie. So when she comes on, we will let her, kind of do her thing. But in the interim, again, my name is Herbert Seward. This is Leslie Moore, and this is the Black Techie. So there's been a lot of stuff going on in
Yeah.
terms of technology and in terms of not just technology, but technology and Black folk.
Tell me about it. It's
Now,
been wild.
yeah, if you're not talking to, I mean, whether we're talking about Bitcoin and watching Dogecoin, take a nosedive, to all the consumer stuff that's coming up, that's coming in right now. Uh, there's a ton of stuff that's going on. Quick shout out though to Johnson C. Smith's esports and the SWAC, both the SWAC and the MEAC on the esports scene. HBCUs are really, really they doing the damn thing. They they are really making their footprint known. And I gotta give a shout out to John Cash. We had him on a while ago when he was giving us his vision um, for where HBCU should be in the in the esports marketplace in the space. And lo and behold, it's coming to fruition. So shout out to if you're watching out there, Dr. Cash. Shout out to everybody that's a part of that degree program at Johnson C. Smith, and shout out to everybody else that's doing their part to make our mark in the esports space. So kudos to all of y'all. Now, one thing that I wanted to also really talk about is some of the things that we've been seeing happen in terms of HBCUs and getting monies back from state and federal governments. One thing that comes to mind immediately is the settlement that the state of Maryland had to pay back in terms of the schools, the state's entire roster of HBCUs, and that Governor Hogan signed that in like probably a couple of months ago, and you're talking about $577 million worth of technology. And there she is. Hold on for just a second.
Okay. Hi.
Hello, Ebony, and welcome. No worries, man. No worries. Uh, Again, for our audience that's watching, Ebony Burrows is the newest
Can you
member
hear
of
me?
Black Techies.
We can hear you.
Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear us, Ebony? Ooh, check your mic. Check your mic. We can hear you. Okay. Okay. Hold on for just a second. Hold tight, Eb. Hold tight. Can you hear us, Ebony?
Ebony, can you hear me? I don't think she can hear us.
Okay. Hold on for a second. Bear with us, folks. And we might need to just wait for Ebony to log back on. In the interim, like I was saying, um, schools are starting to really see the fruits of that. And one of the ways they're starting to see the fruits of it are, investments in STEM and computer sciences and all sorts of technology fields. And one of the things that um, we may really see are some really mainstream programs like Howard and Morehouse and some of those places actually have a ton of really good technology programs and direct pipelines to to corporate America in terms of those employers. Okay, let's try Ebony again. Ebony.
I can hear.
Okay. All right, we got folk. Okay, we got sound in the background. We can hear you can hear the sound. Okay, so whatever's in the sound in the background, we can you might be able to turn that down. Otherwise, I'm gonna. Okay, what's that music in the background?
Like
there you go.
Oh, that's my sound. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Fix that. Sorry.
Okay. All right, no worries, man. Like I said, Ebony Burrows is the newest member of the Black Techies, and I'm going to let her do her own introduction because Ebony's background is kind of like myself and Dave's. We're band heads as well as technology folk. So, without further ado, Ebony, go ahead and take it away.
Wow, I got to introduce myself. I did not do my homework.
This is your trial by fire.
All right.
You're swimming with fishes right now, man.
I know, right? All right. Well, let's see. Yes, my name is Ebony Burrows. I'm a graduate of North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University out of Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm originally from Durham, North Carolina, Bull City for life. Let's see. I'm a band head. I marched in A&T's band. I played piccolo and flute, or shall I say I used to play piccolo and flute. I can't play it all anymore. And now, and I've spent over 20 years in IT. I was a graphics major in undergrad. I did a lot of freelance work for about maybe 10 years. But I kind of started my techie career off as a tech support. And then I floated around doing a lot of different things. I've probably had about 4 different careers in IT. Spent some time in the Microsoft space. But for the last 7 years, I've worked as an Agile practitioner. So you may have heard of Scrum. I've been a Scrum Master. I'm now an Agile coach. And that pretty much means that I know more than just Scrum. So I coach software teams, I coach organizations, I coach leadership in their methods for adopting Agile practices and culture. So that, believe it or not, that's still in the tech space, but it's real heavy on people.
Yeah, and for those folks out there that aren't recognizing the acronyms Scrum, Agile, those concepts, if you're working in technology, you're going to find those things out firsthand a lot sooner than you want. Because
better learn quick.
That is the framework of how technology works these days, how projects get done, how people plan their long-term projects and all sorts of things. So that is the framework by which technology runs these days. Technology industry, technology jobs, and everything you could possibly think of. You ask a developer about Scrum, yeah, they're gonna give you a frown, and they're gonna be like, yeah, really.
Which I really don't understand. Well, most of the time when I run into developers and engineers that frown at Scrum, it's because they really haven't had anybody to help them do it well. It's been forced on them, and some of the values of Scrum have been ignored. But at the end of the day, Scrum is just one of many practices of Agile, and it's all about people. So it's a team centricity, self-organization, self-management, trusting teams with the skill set and knowledge to make good decisions about how to get things done. But probably the biggest frown comes from having to work with business people a lot. So if you've been on a project before, you used to like somebody tossing over requirements, or we talk to the business says they want this and they want that. And here's this big document with all of these things the business said they wanted. And here technology, figure out how to get it done. We'll see you in 6 months. But in the world of Agile, it's constant conversation. It's technical people and business people constantly talking to each other, figuring things out together. And the positive part of that is you are able to deliver value and working solutions at a much quicker pace. But from a technologist perspective, what's really great about it is you're living in this environment where you're getting to innovate. You're not having people who don't really understand the technology, don't really understand the constraints of the software or applications you're trying to build, or the environment trying to tell you what to do. In an agile world, technical people are trusted to figure out the best way to get something done. And then you're working with the business to be able to influence what those things are. And you understand who your customer is because you're constantly having conversations with the business. So, I'll be honest. When I first learned it, I frowned and I turned my nose up at it too. My director was like, she went to a meetup, and I guess they talked about agile, and she came back all fired up. And I was like, yeah, we're gonna do this for like 3 weeks, and then we're gonna go back to the same way we've already done. We've always done it, where our business partners blame us for when something doesn't go the way they think it should go. But our team tried it, and we all kind of fell in love with it, and I loved it enough to turn it into a whole career. So.
I like the Agile and Scrum from a tester standpoint, because most of my experience, my software experiences, I'm a QA, I'm a software tester, I'm the person that breaks all the development people's work, and they hate it. And thank you. That was my job. You made it, I break it, you fix it, we're good.
So I want folks that are watching the Black Techies right now to understand that from here on in terms of our episodes and the topics that we talk about, we are going to be a lot more lenient about the filter that we allow. Because the topics that we talk about are going to be real. And to be quite honest with you, sometimes we might have panel members that's going to have to, we might be on a rant tip, for an episode, for a podcast.
I feel like you directed at me. Like,
no, you haven't met.
You have yet to meet our resident Black militant brother, Dominique Bass, who's one of our other core members of the Black Techies. For those of you that follow us, you guys know who Dominique is. Dominique is a graduate of Tennessee State University. We also have another, pseudo, nerd militant type of cat, and Roberto Joseph, who's our Morehouse grad. And essentially, those guys, they straight no chaser. They call it like they see it.
You haven't seen the rant team.
Yeah, you haven't seen Ranch yet. Haven't seen Ranch yet. So you're gonna fit right in. So, but in talking about that, I wanted to get your opinion in terms of both of y'all. Both of y'all are professional women in information technology that have seen a lot. What are some of the primary things that come to mind when you see minorities in STEM and the information technology space today, in terms of where it's going, what should new folks coming into the space prioritize? What do you guys think?
I like it. I like that we're starting to get more, especially more women, and I like it because what's happening is it's starting to change the conversation. From you might go from a development team that might have one minority person on the entire 10-person team to now it's almost equal numbers. Even when it comes to the woman's perspective, we're getting more numbers, which means we're going from, oh, she's complaining about doing something, to, okay, I value her opinion because we're all in the same space. And it's been so long where we'll say something is wrong and they're like, oh, she's just complaining about it, and then it broke, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, that's great. Sorry you didn't listen to me in the first place, but okay, I guess move along. And it's Just being real. That's how it was for a while. And now that we're starting to see more of ourselves in this space, the conversations are a lot easier and our opinions are starting to be taken a lot more seriously.
Yeah, I can dig it. Because, I mean, it's really, I know in my case, and I know, Leslie, you have some experience as well as a government contractor.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, it's a real issue sometimes, depending on where you work at and who you work with, seeing that type of diversity. For me, working in the DC metropolitan area, I've been, for those of you that don't know, I've been an information technology professional for over 25 years. That's including military service. And, I've gone from being a generalist to information security to cloud computing. That's what I do now. I'm a cloud computing SME, as well as, Office 365 and development, in that space. So it's one of those things to be able to see people that not only look like you, but have the same type of experiences, be in the space. That's empowering. Where I work at right now, I got a sister that's a program manager that is a Texas A&M grad. She got folks that went to Jackson State with Southern, so we can speak the lingo. Where I worked at for the Department of Defense, a long time ago in the galaxy far, far away, practically all of our IT department, I mean, a good 60% of them look like me, look like us, right? So that sort of representation, in certain parts of the country is rare. In certain industries it's rare. So whenever you get the opportunity to see it, it's an awesome thing to see. Now, I know this is kind of an impromptu episode, a more of an informal episode of Black Techies, so we're kind of going on the fly here in terms of topics. So, what are some of the things that you guys have seen in the news tech-wise that have caught your eye?
Sony having something to do with Evo.
Okay.
That's kind of huge in the tech and the gaming community, because remember, Evo was kind of an independent thing and it became sponsored by Sony. Now Sony's kind of picking up on that. And Microsoft just trying to keep making moves to stay afloat.
Microsoft definitely is making moves to stay afloat. And I know me personally as a gamer, I gotta always go back and look at Stadia and see what they're doing, because as somebody that works in the cloud space and looks at cloud gaming, Stadia still being around and and still kicking is an eyebrow raiser to me, because you're already kind of occupying a space that Microsoft and Sony have kind of, the gaming space has kind of been them and everybody else, with Nintendo being a distant third. Stadia has really, they have really stuck around and really surprised a lot of people. Now, I will say that them doing away with their own, development studio,
that was a horrible move. That was horrible. A good selling point. The fact that they had their own games being built within the software was like, okay, we're coming up with our own indie games and we're streaming popular games too. It was a good look for independent artists trying to find a niche, or at least trying to get an audience to see their work. Now they have to go, hopefully get through Steam and any other, maybe Amazon might pick them up. But at the same time, I thought that was detrimental. I'm gonna try
Luna out myself, but I'm not really enthused about trying it out.
But how do you really feel?
I don't know what y'all talking about.
I'm sorry, I'm a gamer.
No,
as well.
Do not apologize. I gotta come clean and be fully transparent. I am not a gamer, and I don't follow tech news. Not unless something major happens and it's on the front page of the Guardian or something like that. I have no idea what's with tech.
Ebony, that is the joy of this podcast.
You're gonna learn so much.
Is that
we find everything.
We all learn a lot about everything from each other. Okay, so
Yeah.
we might not, me and Leslie are kind of gearheads. Okay,
Yeah.
We follow everything. Dominique is kind of in your boat, where even though Dom is is a tech guy, but he's a casual tech guy. Okay, Roberto is a developer, and he's kind of the medium in between. Now, on occasion, we'll have our founder and de facto leader, Dave, pop up on the podcast from time to time. Dave Matthews is off doing his own thing now. He's got his own channel on Twitch, doing his game streams now. Dave is a real gearhead. When we start talking about, cybersecurity and stuff, we're just like,
okay, so I got a Twitch channel too. Like I stream on Twitch whenever I find time.
Yeah, and that's the awesome thing about this podcast, because when we bring folks on, particularly our core members, they have completely different perspectives about tech and about how it impacts people's lives. We can, like, for example, we can talk about consumer technology, right now, and that's more so something that really relates to, a great majority of people that aren't technical, but they don't really know they are, because on some form or level, everybody's a techie on some level. Because
we kind of have to be. That's the world we live in, right? It's the world we live in, and it's the work that we do. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm not a techie. I mean, I work for a technical consultant firm. I work closely with technologists and data scientists, developers, engineers, in all different types of industries. I mean, so I'm kind of a techie by association, and also by necessity. And I'm one of those people that, because I'm working so closely with gearheads, I mean, I can pick up on stuff. Well, I kind of have to pick up on things fairly quickly, because if I'm going to coach people who are specifically technologists, then they need to trust me. And in order to build that trust, I have to understand the language that they're speaking, and I have to learn the challenges that they're going to be dealing with. So, that's kind of how I work. So, I mean, I just want to let everybody know, like, if I'm super quiet, it's because I don't have anything particular to add to the conversation. But I'm still here, I'm listening.
Oh no, like, we can go off on a tangent. Just
man, this podcast is all about tangents. So we might be talking about gearhead stuff one second, and then we might be talking about The Handmaid's Tale the next. You know what I'm saying? So. Yeah,
look, I mean, awesome series, by the way. I do want to comment on your last question about, like, how we feel about seeing so many diverse people in the STEM industry right now. And, I got to agree with Leslie. It does feel good to see so many women, but I think my experience is a little bit different. There's so much attention being paid to hiring and promoting diverse candidates, particularly black people in the industry, right? But what I'm also seeing is a hesitance from people in our industry, because we haven't always been in style, So I think, my impression is, Black people in STEM have always been like, when they gonna put us on, when they gonna put us on, we got the knowledge, we got the skill sets, we keep getting overlooked without, and sometimes not always realizing that the opportunity is ours to take. I mean, I spoke to someone a couple of days ago, and she'd been working for a company for over 20 years. And was really upset that she wasn't really, she's a technologist, and she was really upset that she hadn't been given the opportunity to grow in the company and fighting for raises. She hadn't been promoted, and I'm like, girl, why didn't you leave? why you with the same company for like 20 some years complaining that they don't value you? There's plenty of other places where you can go, especially now because we're in style,
Yep.
It's the age of the black techie. Why you don't sit on your hands complaining that they not giving you your props, but I think part of that too is just kind of always feeling like you're in this place where you're never going to be appreciated, and I think you get complacent in that
that's
area.
That's like the first rule of information technology contracting. Them hoes ain't loyal.
Oh, not even
right.
close.
You gotta be loyal to yourself. You gotta be your own best
advocate. Ain't loyal.
We are about our coins. We're about the highest bidder is who? Got you.
Exactly. And I think one of the things, and like I said, everybody that's anybody that's listening to this podcast that's ever been a contractor on an IT contract for a government, state, or local entity knows that you could sneeze the wrong way and be off a contract. And especially if you're if you were a minority in that space, you have even less leeway, in terms of not just in terms of how you execute on a job and your ability to excel, but even being outspoken on the job. So those sorts of things, are always in the back of my mind when I hear people talking about us being popular these days. Because
I've contracted. I think I probably worked a contract for at least 8 to 10 years of my professional career. And I think, but it's always been in the private sector. And so for me as a contractor, I can't speak for everybody else, but I think for me, it's important to know that I already got issues with authority. So I never probably will fit in well in a government environment. But definitely in the private sector, for me, I don't think I've ever felt like I couldn't say my piece or I needed to be quiet, or I needed to just go along and get along. Like if something wasn't right, it just wasn't right. But I'm also a flight risk. Like every job, it's like she might be here for a few weeks and then we don't know, after my first contract, I was like, you know what? This for me, it was freedom. It felt free for me to not be beholden to a culture, as a full-time employee. I could come in, I could pop in, work a project, and I could tell people like, this is why the shit ain't working. Your process is broken. Why are you building tool? Why are you trying to build a process from a tool when you should really be building your tool based on your process? I also come from a business analyst background. So, I mean, I don't think I really ever had that concern about, feeling like I wasn't able to really be my whole self. But again, part of that is just because I got issues with authority anyway. You was gonna take me as I am, or I was gonna go find another job. So
yeah, you gonna fit in here real good, man.
Oh, you're gonna be great here.
Yeah, just as a side note, what are you guys watching or consuming on the boob tube these days? On YouTube, Netflix, whatever it is. What are you guys watching?
Okay.
Besides The Handmaid's Tale. Okay, let me think about it.
I have not started The Handmaid's Tale yet. I'm waiting.
Like at all, or just this season?
I haven't seen it at all. Like not a single episode. Not a single yet.
I'm waiting from the beginning. I'm envious of you.
I'm so waiting on this. But last weekend I finally caught up on Chilling Chess, Sabrina, and Castlevania. Oh my God, Castlevania was perfect from beginning to end.
Man, let me tell y'all. I decided to check out the Underground Railroad on Amazon Prime.
How'd you feel?
When I tell you that and this goes for anybody else that's watching this podcast that has Amazon Prime and they decide to make that mouse click to watch that series, that first episode you got to have your mind right for.
Man, you is so right. It
You
was
got to have your
so
mind right for that.
the Underground Railroad for me was kind of like them. Like I watched the first episode and I was like, I'll be back next week. Like I can't just sit here and watch this whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I'm not gonna give out any spoilers for folks that are looking to watch it, but I'm kind of conflicted because I get where people are coming from in terms of the whole trauma porn type of deal when it comes to our history, but as somewhat of an armchair historian myself, it's important to tell these stories, and it's important to tell these stories the way they happened, no matter how graphic and no matter how brutal the facts are. And the thing about, the Underground Railroad, them and series like it is that Amazon ain't pulling no punches. They ain't trick.
It's all in your face.
Yeah, they're trying to put people to sleep. And it's like, yeah, bro. I watched that first episode and I talked to my boy about it. It's like, should I watch this? Oh man, you might want to. If it's not for the squeamish. No. I'll say that.
I also feel like shows like that aren't for us. Like they're for us, but the messaging isn't for us. Like it's our story, and I am thankful that these are shows that are written, produced, or directed, or they're brought to us by people from our community. So it ain't like no Quentin Tarantino version of Black.
Yeah.
Love Quentin Tarantino. I know people be hating on Quentin, but I do love his bloody, gory movies. But it's not. It is stories told from our community, right? So I fully appreciate that. But I don't think the messages are fully directed at us. And maybe that's part of the reason why it is hard for us to watch, because but I think for other communities it's a different type of experience because it's not so personal.
I agree, and I think like I said, it's it's one of those things where you have to kind of remind yourself that some of these things aren't made for us in terms of consumption. But when you're watching it, and it's like, God damn, y'all showing another one of these stories again, man? For real? What part of the game is this was hot in the streets?
I don't have Amazon Prime, so eventually I'll get to watch all of this.
Yeah.
I just really want to see it.
Don't watch it all at one time. Don't watch Underground Railroad and then, mix it up.
That's like,
you're going to be messed up for months.
I'm going to give them some months in between. I mean, it took me a minute to get my mind right after Lovecraft Country. I'm like, ooh, okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I said, for me, I'm a history head anyway. So I consume documentaries like I'm drinking this mango Pepsi right here. But it's, those sorts of things also, believe it or not, have real, tie into how, we talk about technology, because having that type of information being readily accessible to people makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I could go on YouTube right now and sneeze the wrong way and, come into contact with a documentary that is absolutely ridiculously awesome, and that's how technology has kind of affected how we, perceive everything. Everything is readily accessible, even information that some people might not want to know about, is readily accessible, and that changes how we really think about how we utilize information and how people can, ignore information for their own, plausible deniability. So it's one of those things that, it's gotten a lot harder for people to just kind of stick their heads in the sand and say, oh, I didn't know that sort of stuff went on. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like it's still entertainment though, right? And I feel like at the minimum with these series, these movies that are for many very traumatic to watch, are painful. And it's not just black pain, right? Like, for anyone that's seen them, there's a lot of other trauma going on in this series besides just racial trauma. Um, but so I kind of think that even though this is still supposed to be entertainment, and that these are stories, like these aren't documentaries. This is, for the most part, this is fiction. It still presents an opportunity to ask questions. When we look at how horrific slavery is depicted in a lot of these movies, or racial tensions are depicted, at minimum, it should make people go, "Was it really that bad? Let me go look this up." So where did everybody go?
We're still here.
Okay. I thought I was the only one. I was about to start singing. No. But I'm
have to
kind of
forgive me,
present the
you have to
opportunity
forgive me
to start
because,
other conversations.
yeah, you have to forgive me, because I'm kind of like a kid in the candy store with this new StreamYard platform that we've started utilizing podcasts with. So for those
I'm
folks that
getting
are out there
warning
that
this
are watching
time
this,
because I'm like, dog sees squirrel. Like, I'm in the middle of time. I'm like, something just changed. Should I be afraid?
absolutely, man. Yeah, and I think that's the other thing about this podcast, that those myself and Dave kind of founded the podcast. Well, actually, Dave is the founder. He approached me about being on the podcast some 2 or 3 some odd years ago, and we were, I was just like, man, I'm with it. What you want me to do? Well, we just talking tech. It's like, are people going to really listen to us? It's like, yeah. And from then, we've been putting out a lot of content. So the fact that we can expand our ranks the way we have, for me, it's pretty special because we've been around, for a good minute and been putting out content. And people have been receptive to it, and the fact that we got a lot of HBCU love on the podcast anyway. It's all HBCU heads and HBCU
It's
representation.
you, baby.
So I mean, it's something that for me it means a lot. Because I mean, between UDC and Alabama State, I wouldn't change anything. Those experiences were just, there wouldn't be anything else, to it. Now, that being said, we're segueing into, the next topic we're going to talk about. The next topic we're going to talk about is Dogecoin and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general. And I wanted to get your thoughts on what do you guys think of cryptocurrency in general, and how do you think it's going to impact how Black folks take finance and take saving and take those basic concepts that we've been trying to get people to do over some odd years. How's that going to streamline the process for people?
I'm not gonna lie. I rode the Dogecoin wave. I got in at a nickel. I got out at 70 cents. And called it a day. But I'm taking that money now to look into possibly um, reinvesting into something else. Other stocks. I've been paying more attention to what companies are about to go public. A couple of companies that you think are public already, they're not yet, but made me just go back into. I used to kind of quote unquote day trade as a hobby, and that's how I got the money to be able to move. But what I ended up doing is giving us an opportunity to look for something long term, even if you don't know anything about stocks, but you're hearing so much about oh, GameStop did this, GameStop, AME did that, and they're on the rise. And it's like it's making people start paying attention more to a market in such a fashion that we're not used to. But it's good that we need to start looking at these possible long term investments. Even if you don't hit the next big thing, get rich and get out, even if you make some kind of profit, how you can reinvest it to make more money and keep that going. You can turn it into something with your kids. You can start treating it like a game, like, oh, have you been noticing, this stock might be this. It's teaching a little bit more financial literacy, which is something our community has always lacked for some reason. But then I'm not gonna get into my own little theory about it. It ranges with Dom's, but it's we're getting to know more about the dollar and getting what it means. And I think cryptocurrency might be the future. The only problem it's ever going to have is what kind of actual standard is it going to keep? Because if we're going to keep it on the dollar standard, that's not going to be worth much. Even if they went to like a metal, like maybe gold or a silver standard, and how would you actually realistically get coins to translate? Even if a coin can have the same value around the world, how would you get that to translate into the current market? A lot of people aren't going to want to let that go.
Yeah. And I think what's happened with China and Hong Kong in terms of Dogecoin and other major cryptocurrencies has really opened a lot of eyes to that because Hong Kong was like, no, um, we're going to shut this down, and on top of that, you're going to have to be a professional investor in order to even partake in this in our markets. And that is, they were like, the market's just like, oh, damn, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not good. So, um, you know, it, for me, as somebody that's starting to really understand the basics behind cryptocurrency and how the new digital currencies work, it was a real eye opener. And it was a real eye opener in terms of the volatility of some of these coins that are coming out, like Shiba Inu Shiba Inu. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Shiba
Yeah,
Inu.
Shiba Inu. Yeah, excuse me, Shiba Inu. Some people have referred to that as just an advanced Ponzi scheme because of how the coin, was really inflated in terms of its value, and then it just dropped off the face of the planet. You know, so it's definitely something that it's a frontier that Black folk can really, learn more about. But just in terms of actual financial literacy, and I think both you guys are on, right on the button on this. You know, teaching more about financial literacy in general, for our communities is paramount, and technology has a lot to do with that. Technology has a lot, can be a real catalyst to streamline that process for a whole new generation of Black folk. So,
Yeah, yeah, I'd
you know,
agree. Technology is to the Black community now what learning to read was back in slavery days. It's like if you
Right?
can learn to read, you can do anything. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about cryptocurrency. I mean, I have a fairly diversified portfolio, but I got a guy for that. I don't mess with money.
just hop on the phone and
Yeah,
call your
I check the
manage
account.
portfolio.
Yeah, I just, hey, I heard about this thing, check it out, see if we should put some money in it. All right, I trust your judgment. And he's a Hampton grad, so I keep all my business with us, as much as possible. But I don't know. I mean, I kind of felt like cryptocurrency is potentially a new financial bubble. I mean, I think in terms of Leslie, to what you were saying about the standard, I don't know if that's really. I don't know if that really should even be a big concern, because at the end of the day, money is just this kind of fabricated ideal, right? Like money isn't true. You know,
It's
it's
whatever value they feel like it is today. Like, oh, the dollar went up. I guess the dollar went up. I guess it went
yeah,
down.
you know, it's like somebody decides there was a decision made that coins made from copper and silver and nickel or whatever, that coins and dollars with ink on it, like somebody attached value to that. And so I think if cryptocurrency is going to stick around, all the powers that be have to do is bless it and say that it's worth something, or it can be traded for something valuable. And here's a space where it can be done. Um, I'm not. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm risk averse. It's just that I'm not someone that's particularly interested in investing on that level. But I totally agree that financial literacy is important in our community. So wherever your interest may lie, I think it's important to just understand the basics. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Diversification is important. I think, Leslie, the idea you had about, you got in early and then you made some money and now you're thinking about where else you might want to invest. Those are just smart things to do. My parents were not my parents knew how to pay bills on time. Like that was pretty much like the
Yeah.
extent. Pay bills on time and make sure you got like life insurance. Like that was the extent of financial literacy. And but I was really fortunate that I learned very early on that you don't want to live off of credit cards, and you don't want to have too much debt, and that having no debt is true freedom. So, and then of course the idea of letting your money work for you. I think that's like the new consciousness that our community needs to get into, is figuring out how to move away from working for every dollar and letting your dollar make dollars for you. The American
Exactly.
dream, the American dream is not to it is not a hard day's pay for a hard day's work. That is not the American dream. The American dream is to get paid doing the least amount of work.
Work possible. Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
That's the
Work
real.
smarter, not harder.
Yeah. Anything else, they telling you anything else, that's a lie. They trying to get you to burn yourself out. The dream is to get paid doing the least amount of labor as possible, or doing the thing that brings you joy. Like for me, that's my American dream, is to earn money continuously and still do the things that bring me the most joy. So yeah, ain't no reason to be out here working yourself to the bone for pennies.
Right,
Yeah.
you out here killing yourself. Like, I worked 80 hours, and then you can't see. Or like,
Mhm.
I had to work 70 hours this week. Okay, did you figure out what sleep means? Because I could have
Yeah.
sworn that needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody cares. At the end of the day,
I feel
no
like
one will care that you were a hard worker. Like, I mean,
Yep. No comment.
it won't matter
No
at the end of the
comment.
day.
I'm gonna say,
I mean, I'm gonna tell you what. I was on a contract, and I will say their name on this podcast, 'cause I don't work for y'all no more. The United States Geological Survey, Department of Interior. These dudes gave me an award year before for custom fabricating a Jira and all a Jira application platform from scratch, program and scratch, everything. To really organize their projects and stuff. And the government was, oh, we're impressed. Here, take this award and this gift card.
really?
Then 6, 7 months later, we're talking about, well, we're going to do, we're kind of looking at cuts and cut back the contract. It's like, okay, what's that about? So those sorts of things, are a lot more commonplace than people realize. And
Oh,
yes, I'm talking to you, USGS. Y'all did a lot of folks like that on that contract wrong. That's just wrong, period. But, like Ebony said, you bet on yourself, particularly in information technology. You bet on your skills, you bet on your ability to grow in jobs. And, for you new graduates that are looking at this podcast and are going out into the world as, information technology folk, bet on yourself. That means don't just rely on your degree. Rely on making sure that knowledge base continues to expand.
Oh yeah.
find yourself a niche. If you know what you like, steer your career toward what you like, so you won't feel like you want to kill yourself and everybody around you. It's going to be stressful. I found my niche, and my favorite thing to do was testing. Is like, I didn't like building the applications because they would break. I liked breaking them purposely because I knew what mine would break. So I found my niche, and I found what I like.
Yeah, I found my niche a number of times. But that would be my advice: is to not be afraid. Well, it's kind of a combination of what both of you are saying. I mean, technology is the world of IT is a continuous learning culture, right? So whatever you learned in college, whatever you got your degree in, that is really just the beginning. That is not the end of that's the end of a chapter, but it ain't the end of the book. So if you're in STEM or anything, any place in STEM, it's always going to be about this continuous learning culture. And part of being in a learning culture is, to Leslie's point, identifying your niche and then directing and guiding your career, guiding your steps towards that niche. But as you do more, you learn more. And it's okay, and you shouldn't be afraid that the thing that you were really passionate about 3 years ago is not, you don't have the same type of passion for. If you discover something new that you want to invest more learning in, it's always cool to change trajectory and learn that. I did read somewhere, I read in an article, it said something about it takes about 5 years in order to master something. And I can testify to that. I didn't realize that until that was me. But I mean, other people might be brighter than I. But for for me, I think after I spent like 5 years in a particular area in my career, then I felt like I knew exactly what to do. I could teach this to somebody else. I could help other people grow in it. But right around that time, I was also changing up to do something brand new and something that was more challenging. So for me, it was like around every 5 years, that's when I was doing something different in my career that was more challenging. That's kind of how I got into Agile too. But yeah, definitely continue to learn and then point yourself into those areas where you're most passionate. And those two things together, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. So this has been on my mind since like the middle of the podcast. And I got to ask y'all both this. What's better, Bayou Classic or the greatest homecoming on earth?
Shit, easy.
Okay. I guess we doing this. I bet. I bet. Bayou Classic. Because we can hold it anywhere. Because we just had it in Shreveport this year. I had the most fun I've had over. It had been almost 20 years since I went back for Bayou Classic. And it came to me this year, so I was great.
Yeah, so, I gotta be honest. I never been to Bayou Classic.
Well, I'm going to say this.
Hello,
I'm going to say this. You haven't gone to both. Both of them are unique. It's a coin toss for me because I'm going to a Bayou Classic. I'm going to a Battle of the Bands the night before the Bayou Classic, seeing Southern and Grambling go at it. That was a unique scene. That was
the Battle of the Bands is awesome every year.
I mean, And I mean, this was in 2000. I went to the last one here in 2019, pre-COVID, and it was just like, yo, there. I mean, we're standing in line in the Superdome, Superdome, and there are people come from all over the place, all over, not just SWAT country, but I mean, we were standing in line with some folks from Detroit, and they were just like, "We just down here to check out the bands." It's like, okay,
Well, yeah. I mean, for me, that's a given.
and I'll say this about the greatest homecoming on earth. I've had a chance to check that out. Y'all crazy down there, man. Oh, I mean that can't. I mean, North Carolina Antiques camp. I've never seen a campus that packed. I mean,
yeah.
I think we went down there on a Friday or a Saturday. Me and a couple of friends went down there, and I'm just like, man, we swimming through people. I mean, literally.
Yeah. That's why I can't go to homecoming every year. Like I know people who do. They go every year. They go up on Thursday. They coming back on Sunday night. They resting up on Monday before they go back to work. When I know people that just go up and they just stay for the day on Saturday, but they go every year. And look, my homecomings got live. The first year I came out of A&T, I was my first year as a graduate. I went back to Greensboro. I had some brand new clothes that I technically couldn't afford to buy, but I was working. I had some new work money. I saved up. I still had people that was in school, so I had somewhere comfortable to stay. And I still knew people on the campus, right? So that first year I went back from homecoming, it was a blur. It was that was the most alcohol I've ever consumed at one time. And marijuana. It was like weed and alcohol. Like kids say no to drugs, but when you over the age of 21, you do what the hell you want to. There was all things happening at one time. I went to a house party. This was the night before. This was Friday night. Like, this was not even Saturday. I went to a house party. Things got out of hand. I went to the game. I don't even know how. I think somebody drugged me to the game the next morning. And people was like, "Hey, girl, it was so good to see you at the party last night." And I'm like, "You were probably I don't remember you. When did we talk? Like, was you there? A whole blur. And so after that first game, I pretty much knew, like, I'm not going to be able to do this every year. So I probably could make the homecoming every 3 or 4 years if I really want to do it up. But you're right. It's always a sea full of people. It is different for me now because the band room is no longer in Frazier Hall. And it was something special about the band marching from the field, marching back to the band room, going up the hill. Like, there was something special about that, and it doesn't feel the same now that the band room is moved. But, it's not a bad thing for it to not be the same. It's a different generation of kids in the band. But, A&T, that's still home for me. So when I do get to go, I make sure I got Pedialyte. I make sure Advil, Bengay, because knees ain't what they used to be.
Came on.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, man. I know for us, for me, from my experience, I mean, Alabama State, Alabama A&M, Magic City Classic, that is quite literally, that is the de facto, that's the de facto experience for anybody that is in the state of Alabama. I mean, Birmingham is crawling with people the entire weekend. We got a Battle of the Bands that Friday night, and Legion Field is sold out, literally every time. You're talking about 60 to 80,000 people, and those folks don't even sell out for the Iron Bowl, and that's Alabama and Auburn. So, yeah, I feel you, because I mean, I marched my first one, and I was just like, man, what the hell did I get myself into? And I mean, I had such a fun time, and is those sorts of experiences stay with you, you know, and they stay with you, until you're pushing up daisies. It's like I got a coworker that was talking about, uh, he went to Alcorn State, and he was talking about his yearly classic they had with Jackson State, and they can't stand each other. They're like,
They really can. I've seen it.
yeah, they can't stand each other. So it's just like, those sorts of things are really, for those folks that are watching, particularly high school folks that watch our podcast and considering going to an HBCU,
Do it.
those reasons are why HBCUs are awesome, because you make lifelong friends, you create lifelong bonds, and the legacy and the history of the schools that you go to, no matter where you go to school at, it's translatable to everything. So,
Yeah.
The
yeah, I mean,
entire
that's
experience is worth it. You're gonna feel a greater bond, especially with those in your major. Those are gonna be your best friends at like 2 in the morning. Y'all trying to figure out what are y'all trying to do.
yeah.
True that.
Now,
Yeah. I had a conversation with someone recently about, PWIs versus HBCUs, and it wasn't a debate or anything, but it was a question about why is there so much pride with graduates of HBCU, like, what's so special? And I'm like, I haven't, particularly in IT, haven't been in a professional, the corporate life for over 20 years. One thing I can say, and this may not apply to everybody 100%, but in my experience, HBCU grads the the corporate workplace without a chip on their shoulder. Like my experience is Black professionals that come out of PWIs tend to have this, tend to be a little bit more. I got something to prove, or I gotta make sure I get mine, and sometimes that means I gotta step on somebody to get it. Whereas graduates from HBCUs have a tendency, and again, this won't necessarily apply to everybody, but definitely graduates of HBCUs go into the workplace with this attitude of course I should be here. Of course I'm good at what I do. I can't believe you thought differently. It's
pretty much.
and part of it is because we were raised in these institutions where excellence was expected. Like we did, everybody looked like us. Who we was who we were as people, the way we looked, our style, our flair, the way we spoke, all of that was acceptable. So there was no them versus us. It was just us and everything that we brought to the table. And so then we go out into the world and dare people to not be down with it. When you come from a PWI, there's always this I think there's this feeling, this survival, I don't know, this survival instinct. You're constantly aware that you're a minority. I think that's what it is. There's this hyper awareness that you're a minority, and then you go out into the workplace as a minority. At an HBCU, you're a majority. You're part of the majority community. You're protected, and you carry that with you when you leave.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, I think Ebony's spot on. I think to add on to that too, once you get into the workforce, people see that HBCU, pedigree, and sometimes you have people that don't really learn the lessons of seeing what HBCU products are capable of, and they tend to underestimate what HBCU products are capable of. I'm a perfect example of it. Got out the Navy, they looked at my naval service and the fact I was an information technology specialist in the Navy. And it's like, oh, you went to Alabama State. Okay, well, how good of a school is that? Good enough for me to qualify. Good enough for me to get the ASVAB scores to get into this profession. So, and I don't think there's particularly when it comes to working in large private sector environments or the government, I don't think there's an HBCU product that has not experienced that, where you might be pitted against somebody from a George Mason or somebody from a Georgetown or a University of Arkansas or wherever. And the first thing that happens is like, okay, well, yeah, somehow, some way, this degree has more prestige, or that experience has more validity than the person that went to the HBCU. And not, just about every time it's a complete misnomer. It's I've known cats that have come from large schools, got degree, couldn't even put a basic web page together. I had to deal with, I had to train a lot of those cats on my first official job working for the Department of Defense, as a contractor. I'm not going to mention any names. I'm not going to mention any departments, but yeah.
I ain't going to say them all.
Right. But I don't think there's anybody that's ever had that, that hasn't had that experience. So,
yeah,
for those folks that are out there, you got that HBCU pedigree, you got a lot. And that's something that you should wear on the front of your chest like Superman, because that's exactly how important it is.
Yeah. That's real talk. It is not, and it is on purpose that when someone asks me where I went to school, I say North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. I do not say A&T. It does not say A&T on my resume. And graduates of A&T, if I come across your resume and it says A&T and not North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, I will send shit back. Just
like I said, I went to Southern University and agricultural and mechanical college.
You gotta say it all.
Alabama State University.
Like,
you gotta say it all. Because for us, we just say, oh, I went to A&T, then you got people, oh, like in Drumline? No, not like in Drumline. AT&T? No, so you gotta say the whole thing out. A couple of years ago, I was traveling for work. I was traveling to New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, like every week. And, I always made it a point to wear some HBCU paraphernalia. And if I had on a sweatshirt or a t-shirt or a pen that said A&T, someone would always ask me about it. And I was happy to tell them about my school and when we were founded, what our mission is. And and it's because like we're the representatives, right? We're the living legacy, and everybody should know where we come from. And like, to Harper's point, like, yeah, I think it is, particularly in the private sector, I do think it is a bit, and it shouldn't be, but it is a bit of a nuance to come across people who are graduates of HBCUs and can bring high value into the workplace for the customers that they serve, and not just as skilled technologists or not just people with high professional skills, but also who bring value in a lot of different ways. The way that, like for me, for example, I do a lot of work with my teammate resource group and diversity and inclusion. So I get the opportunity to speak publicly to our entire company about what it is to be Black in technology or be a Black professional. And I talk a lot about my HBCU experience to people who really don't know what HBCUs are. So I think it's important that for every opportunity we have, we show up proud of our schools, proud of the legacy that we're a part of, and we talk about it till we blue in the face. People's always saying, I went to Yale, I went to Duke, and I spent some time in the Ivy League. You know what? I don't get two shits about your
exactly. So
let me tell you about these HBCU streets. Like, I'm right there with them. These people walking around here with these University of Phoenix socks like they got in a commercial. Right? Let me show you these socks with the A&T on the side of it. Don't be ashamed. Put it right.
Yeah, and I think I think before we wrap things up, I think it's very important to kind of touch on what Ebony just said. You're talking about people that are walking around with for-profit universities on their feet, but you got 100 plus some odd HBCUs out there, most of which have some pretty viable online programs for adults and for adult learners and for the new landscape. Take advantage of it. Don't go to no shade to the University of Phoenix or anybody or Southern New Hampshire or anybody else. Although I don't put Southern New Hampshire in that category. Those guys are been nonprofit for a long time. But yeah, look, you got the opportunity, and this goes out to HBCUs too. If you got the opportunity to market and to attract the unconventional student, do so, because that's where the future's headed. It's not just going to be high schoolers coming out of high school and obtaining a degree. You're going to have adults coming back to learn new skills. You're going to have people that are getting out of careers to relearn new skills for a new economy. So be ahead of that curve. Right off the top of my head, Norfolk State, Hampton University, Howard to a lesser extent, because they still got some work to do. Morehouse, online programs geared toward continuing adults and unconventional students. Those sorts of things, and like I said, we tie this into technology a lot. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Being the accessibility to that sort of education for everybody. And that's where HBCUs can, really be on the cutting edge to do so for our communities. So, yeah, if you're an admin watching this podcast, I hope you guys are out there. Click, support, follow us, please. Pass the word. We need it. Yeah, that's what we want. We're an all-inclusive umbrella, and there's no such thing as having a specific type of student being an HBCU student.
Right. For me, I had an opportunity to go to multiple schools. I had, back in the Stone Age, 2001. It feels so long. 20 years. So long ago. Besides the fact, I had an opportunity to go to, I had $64 million in scholarships. I could have gone to almost any school I wanted to. And I narrowed my choices down to 2 HBCUs. I was either going to Southern or I was going to Dillard. Those were my decisions. Out of every school in Louisiana, those are the 2 schools I wanted to go to. And I was in Lafayette, Louisiana, where there is a school. And it wasn't about the quality of education, because the quality was spread out to the schools I wanted to go to. If I stayed in state, these are the 2 schools I was going to in state. But it came down to what environment made me feel the most welcome. I toured Dillard. I was sold. I was sold on Dillard. Bought a t-shirt and everything same day I'm on the tour. I was ready to go. My parents will swear that this is where I was going. And then the dean of the Honors College, Dean Wade, rest in peace. She took me and my mom on a tour of the campus herself. Took us around the Honors College, took me to what dorms I was possibly going to, and even let me meet some of the teachers in the computer science department and the department head. So she made me feel like I was literally going to be cradled through the whole experience. And to be honest, I was. And I'm like, you know what? Southern sold me. And everyone on my mom's side of the family, if they didn't go to Southern, we were around it all of our lives. And so me saying I was going to my mom's alma mater meant a lot to her. And she said she felt like if I still would have said I was going to Dillard, she was going to try everything in her power to make me switch to Southern just because how welcome she felt. And that it's that welcoming that HBCUs will give you that sometimes you're not going to get that from a PWI. You're going to get the red carpet treatment, but are you really getting that? I'm probably going to see you a lot, And so I'm going to be around you in the beginning so you'll get used to me, kind of welcome. That's what made the difference.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that, particularly as this, our, society becomes more and more and more tech oriented. I think that's essential, particularly for Black folk, to have that sense of accountability. And that's something that if you've gone to an HBCU, for those folks out there that are watching, if you've gone to an HBCU, you already know you're not a number. You go into a class, you're accountable. If you're not towing your weight or meeting the standard, you're not only going to get the side eye from your professor. That professor is going to contact your home. That professor is going to contact your folks that are footing the bill or help you out with the loan or whatever, and you're going to hear it from all sides. For all intents and purposes, that's how it should be. You go to a PWI, odds are, unless in very rare circumstances, you might have that professor that wants to take that extra time, regardless of how many heads he sees in the class, what have you. With the HBCU, you're going to get that. Period.
Yeah.
Every single professor I ever dealt with was exactly like that. You get this assignment done. If you didn't get it done on time, you might get a message from your band director. Yeah, you need to get this assignment done. You got a call from your professor. Why didn't you get this assignment done? So, Ebony, you already know. You've dealt with the master of that.
I think other people probably experienced that. Well, I did not experience that from Dr. Hodge, but I'm sure other people did. I didn't have a lot of options when I was coming out of high school, and part of that was my fault. I was a good student in high school, but I wasn't a great student. I did not score well on the SATs. I'm still bad at taking exams. I got a long list of certifications that I had to pass exams for, and it is work for me. So I did not score well on the SAT the time that I took it. I did do good on the ASVAB. I always kind of thought, and my dad taught me out of this, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to go to college. I'm just going to the Coast Guard. And my dad is retired Army, and he was like, can you even swim? And I'm like, they teach you that though. Like, you how to swim? Not right yet. But so yeah, I wasn't a great student, but I loved A&T. I grew up around the corner from Central, and Central was just too familiar. So I knew I wanted to get out of Durham. But every time I had the opportunity to see A&T's band, I was front row. And I took a couple of tours of the campus, just, on a Wednesday, just kind of me and some friends just drove up to Greensboro one day and we just walked the campus to see what it felt like. And it felt like home. It felt like it was far enough away and had enough diversity. Like I didn't feel like I was going to be going to school with people that I grew up with or that I went to high school with. I felt like I was going to get enough of a diverse experience, even though it was a Black college. A&T was where I first learned that Black people was from Idaho. Like, Black people in the square states? For real? Like, it was a lot. I just didn't know, But yeah, I think this is bad. I don't know if they still do this, but we had to take placement exams for them to recommend like what program you should major in. So I had to take a placement exam. And my mom was with me. I remember she took me up to campus so I could do my exam and figure out, what I was going to major in. And I placed in the School of Business and Administration. And I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to go to school for business. It's boring. My mom was always like, well, you'll always have a job. I was like, I don't want a job. I want to be passionate about something.
Yeah.
So we talked to like the head. We talked to the head of one of the departments in the School of Business, and he's like, "Well, you score pretty high. Are you sure you don't want to major in business? You can do all of these things." And I was like, "No, I am an artist. I want to do something with arts and computers." I had no idea what that was called. I just knew it was art and computers. And he goes, "They got some over. They got something like that over in Price Hall. Price Hall. I think they got a program like that over there in Price Hall. Go on over there and talk to Dr. Lord." And I said, "Well, which one is Price Hall?" It's the one with the radio station. Price Hall was the brokenest down building on the yard at that time. And
Man.
I go over there and I'm like, damn, why I gotta be in the broke down building? I talked to Dr. Lord. I explained to him that I really love computers, but I was also an artist. I painted, I sketched, and I worked in a lot of different mediums. And he was like, "Oh yeah, you want to do graphic design? That's what that's called." And the major is graphic communication. So the fact that I went to college and the data said that I should be majoring in one thing, and there were people there who listened to me when I said, "But this is not what I'm really excited about. Do you have something here that I can be excited about?" Like, this is how unprepared I was about college. I had no idea what the majors was. I just knew I was going to college. I was going to go to college. Boom. I'll figure it out when I get there. But there were people there that like pointed me in the right direction, listened to me. And then once I got into the right program, I thrived. I was nurtured. I had instructors who, when I slacked off, they got on me. My sophomore year, by the end of my sophomore year, I had a 1.6 GPA. And it was like, so do you still want to be here? I did have people who checked me, and they saw that I had potential and I could do a lot of different things. And so, like, to both of your points, you don't always get that at a PWI because the classrooms are larger, the campus is larger, and you have to work hard to be special to people. And I don't feel like I had to do anything outlandish in order to be noticed. I was one of the students. I chose this program. I was excited about it. And when my professors saw that I was struggling, they had conversations with me and encouraged me. So yeah, I'm glad A&T was the only school I applied to. I'm glad I always knew I was going to go to a HBCU, and I never even considered going anywhere else. Being from Durham, I'm right there, Duke, Carolina, NC State. I mean, it was always those universities were right there. Like that was a 20-minute drive either way. So, but it was never even. I never even considered going to a PWI. I was always going to go to a Black college.
Well, I know, speaking for myself, I'm a native Washingtonian, born and raised Washington, D.C. So, I grew up, spent the majority of my middle school, high school years right down the street from Howard University. So, I, already had that exposure. Been on Howard University's campus millions of times, more times than I can count. And I literally, I mean, I had an opportunity to go to the University of Maryland or the Towson or someplace else like that. And I was like, I want to do HBCU. I ended up staying at home for 1 year at UDC, which at the time it had a completely different profile than what it has now. UDC is more of even though it's still an HBCU, it's more of a really international school. Back then, that was a school DC kids went to school at. So it was like, okay, if you went to school, public school in the area, you went to school, in Southeast, Northeast, you went to college at UDC. And, I did 1 year there, and then I had like, well, I got to get out of the area because, like Ebony said, you don't want to go to school someplace where you feel like you're going back to high school, people, and you have that feeling, for the more four more of your years. So, some of the places I was looking at Southern University. I actually had been offered a scholarship, by Dr. Greg's there. You know, Unfortunately, that didn't come through until like the spring, and I was just like, man, I got to go someplace else. So
I feel
I
you.
was, yeah, I was looking closer, like at A&T, Norfolk State, places like that, and I have to see Alabama State. Alabama State was actually like third or fourth on the list. And my father was like, Alabama? Really? You from Washington? You going to Alabama?
Like,
And
wait.
he's like, but he humored me, and we went down to the campus and visited the campus, and I immediately fell in love with the place. There's so much history on the campus. Seat of the civil rights movement, or at least a seat of the civil rights movement, because A&T had a lot of had a lot to do with that as well. Um, and I was just like, okay, yeah, this is where I'm going to go to school at. Because it was far enough away from home. It's 10 hours away from home, so you didn't have the dynamic of parents just popping up out of nowhere, to be like, what you doing? So yeah, I knew that wasn't going to happen, and I needed, and for me at that point in time in my life, I needed that space, and I needed that particular environment to grow, and that's what it did. I wouldn't change anything for it, and it's just so many really good experiences there. I lived off campus, in school run housing, which was awesome because it was like you ain't had to worry about the dorm, dealing with a whole bunch of other stuff with the dorm and everything. But Alabama's is that was culture shock for me. Montgomery, Alabama,
But it was.
that's culture
Yeah.
shock.
I'm from the South, and Alabama is a culture shock for me.
Look, you going from
Louisiana all my life, so
you talking about a kid, used to wearing New Balance and slouch socks, going to seeing cross colors and all sorts of other stuff. And it's just like, where am I at? What planet am I on? So, but it was awesome. And I wouldn't, for anybody out there that's watching and listening to this story, this yarn, um, that's what going to HBCU is all about. It's growth, and it's making those bonds and being able to really share those things far beyond your time at school. So, I really, you know, that's one of the driving forces behind this podcast, and that's why we have our core members, have those experiences and perspectives the way they do, because that's what we want to communicate to our audience. So, that being said, we have been going for almost an hour and a half. Wow, this is a long podcast. Um, we're going to go ahead and close out the show, um, by doing, making mention of a book that both myself and Ebony have been a part of. And this is the HBCU Experience HBCU Band Alumni Edition. Uh, both myself and Ebony are contributing authors on this project, this anthology of experiences, and it is now on Amazon and it's an Amazon bestseller. So by default, you're talking to two Amazon best-selling authors here, or contributors. So whatever that means. So so yeah. So if you do, if you can, after we end the show and we do our goodbyes, you will see an ad for the book and who's contributing on the book and where you can obtain the book. So if you want to find out more about HBCU band culture and how it ties into the HBCU experience, check us out. Everybody that wrote on the book, all 30 plus some odd people that wrote on the book, have unique experiences and they have unique backgrounds, and we'd love to see, share those experiences with everybody. So pick up the book and support us. In closing, Thank you, Ebony, for coming on the show. We welcome you with open arms. You're going to fit in more than you know. And we welcome you. You're going to be an awesome addition to our core panel of techies. Leslie's been the stalwart, since Dave crossed the burning sands and started doing his own stuff. For future episodes, we have some pretty exciting stuff coming up. We're going to have a kids podcast where we're going to have some kids involved, my daughter included. Whenever she decides she wants to come again, and sons and siblings and other kids that may be interested, depending on what week it is. We are also going to have a women in tech podcast specifically, which is going to have we're going to have some other guests. I got some pretty special guests from my experiences lined up, some pretty heavy hitters. So stay tuned for that in the coming weeks and months. And hopefully the next couple of podcasts we'll have our full crew, and we're going to be back to the regular shenanigans like we normally do. So for everybody that's followed us, thank you for bearing with us for our long hiatus. We're back, and we're going to be back and putting out more content, bigger and better than ever. Until next episode, hail Wakanda.
Hail Wakanda.
The first ever HBCU Band Anthology, The HBCU Experience. The HBCU Band Alumni Edition is a collection of stories written by prominent HBCU band alumni throughout the world. HBCU band alumni who are doing great things in their careers, businesses, and communities nationally and internationally. The authors share their stories and experiences of how being a HBCU band member has molded them into the people they are today. Purchase your copy today and support the HBCU Experience, the HBCU Band Alumni Edition at Amazon.com.